writing groups are necessary. They're mandatory. You have to be part of one if you're serious about publishing, creating, writing. But there is an aspect of writing groups that every single one of us is susceptible to, needs to be aware of, and needs to develop skills to deal with. This episode 94 of Horrible Writing. That will never work. You can't publish that. Seriously? Don't. Oh my God, that's another thing you can do. That's bad. You probably should find other hobbies. You ever learn how to stop? Stop. Be happy. Quit while you're done. Don't bother me. I've seen better. Do you really want to? And my third grade, give it up. Welcome to Horrible Writing, the rawest, most candid, in-your-face writing show on the interwebs because none of us have time to suck. Let's do this. Hey, Horrible Writing family, Paul Sading, your host. I hope this finds you well. If all things have gone well, I'm not dead, and I've actually just returned from Colorado. Of course, with this summer, any time of year, I like to record episodes ahead of time. But when I'm traveling, I'm trying to get better about this, so I stick to it. And I don't have a slip-up like I've had recently where I miscalculated and then didn't get episodes out on time. And it's important that I do. So I have just been to Colorado, and I hope I've come home from it. If I haven't, this is going to be a really eerie episode. And I've even gone and checked out the Colorado Renaissance Fair because #Renaissance Fair. Men in armor and swords fighting each other. You can't beat that. And I'm refreshed, I hope. I should be, because I don't feel that tired now. And I'm ready to talk to some things. We've got some great things coming up. In the next episode, we're going to talk to A.C. Ward, author A.C. Ward, part of the Horrible Writing community on Facebook. Why aren't you there yet? And an author we feature quite often over on The Stories We Tell. I hope you're listening to that one as well. What a great collection of authors that show is. But she's going to come on. She's got some tough, hard-hitting questions I have to answer for her. In addition to that, 100th episode is coming up very, very soon, and I have a number of past guests who contributed to the episode, and I'm excitedly putting that together for you so that it can be released on time and that we can just celebrate 100 episodes of this show. I never thought this would happen, but there's a lot of things I didn't think would ever happen with this show. One of the things that I knew would happen was that I was going to give you my opinion on stuff and my experiences. After all, this show was founded upon the principle of a know-nothing writer to open paren, hopefully published, close paren, author. Along the way, I've been trying to learn the things, along the way, I've been trying to share the things I'm learning with you. And this is no different. And I have talked about writing groups before, previously, but it's something I feel is important to rehash. And the fact is, folks, some of you are going to come along at this episode. This will be your first episode of the show. Some of you will come along 2 years from now, and you're not going to go back to episode number 1. You may, some of you may, but it's most likely not going to happen. So it's good to re-hit thematically some of the earlier aspects from time to time, and that's what I want to do with this one, because this one is something I see a lot, and it can be very detrimental to the long term, depending on someone's goals. Writing groups, they're great. You've got to be in one. You have to. Other people besides your mom and your spouse or your significant other or your friend has to read your writing. Somebody who writes, not just a reader, but another writer, they have to check out your stuff. Your structure, your characters, your flow, your pacing. all that stuff, and sometimes your grammar. I personally don't use writing groups for spelling, grammar, the stuff that could be done by myself, by software, by copy editors. I need the writing group to talk about structure, characterization, plot, beats, things like that. That's what I use mine for. And I think that's what most people, from my experience, use them for as well. If you're not using a group online or in person, or starting a group in person, if you don't have one in your area, yes, you can do that, then you need to. Now, there's reasons why people don't, but that's not the topic of this episode. You've got to challenge yourself, figure out the reason, what's holding you back, and work on addressing that. Assuming you're past that, you're beyond that, and you're in a group. Here's what I wanted to make sure I covered in this episode, because it's something I've wanted to talk about for a long time. It seems in the digital age, as more and more people have access to information, and everybody's selling something, and everybody wants to be a superstar, and they want your attention, yada, 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 that the same thing that I see in the social realm happens in the writing realm, and I'm sure it happened well before the internet and social media, when a couple of writers get together and they share their work. Depending on the dynamic of the group, you may have a great group. Some people do. Some people have fantastic groups. Some people have groups with bullies. I mean, essentially, that's what they are. I'm the most published amongst us, and you must listen to me. People like that. And by the way, no, you don't need to listen to them. I'm sure they're a wealth of knowledge if you can filter out the junk that they're sending your way. But there are more democratic writing groups out there. But even in those, and I think those are even more subtle, though I don't know, it's a debate I'm having still in my head. They're all equally evil in the respective voice. What do I mean by that? Yes, writers in writing groups can help you with your voice if they're intuitive and perceptive enough to be looking for voice, and if you've read a lot there. So don't give this a 1 month shot at your writing group. You need to go for a long time, and you need to be reading to basically the same group of people over time, and over time they'll come to know what your voice is. But one thing you do have to be very careful of in receiving that feedback from the group is being sure that this group doesn't strip your voice from you. Some of you may be completely new writers and your voice is in its infancy. It's not even really developing yet. I mean, you're taking those steps because every time we sit down and put those hands on the keyboard, we are practicing. We are getting better. We are developing that voice. Yet at the same time, depending on where you are, that voice could be very susceptible to being sanitized. Groups are good for that. Group dynamics, social pressures, people with opinions on what writing should be, etc., etc. Keep in mind when you do go to your group, what your genre is, who your influences are. You don't want to copy somebody, but you know when you're influenced, you know what kind of style resonates with you, and it will influence what your style ultimately is. But there are going to be people who are going to suggest, recommend, or tell you / direct you to change the way something is said, the way you've structured something. Hopefully you do not have a group like that. And hopefully, if they don't like the way something is said / structured, that they actually give you that feedback in that package, if you will. Hey, when you wrote this line here, this paragraph, or when you did this one word in return paragraph style for this part of the story, it didn't work with me. It pulled me out, etc., etc. And that's fine. And that's a lot easier for you to see. It's not so subtle, right? You can understand what's going on there. But that's not always how it happens. And less experienced writers may miss that aspect. just because someone in your writing group doesn't like the way something is said, the way something is structured, doesn't mean that it's wrong or bad or that it needs to be altered. Even if it's 3 or 4 or 5 people in that writing group saying the same thing, you might need to listen a little more carefully to see if you can hear what they're saying about it. But your voice, the way you use words, I like using one-word sentences from time to time to convey an aspect of something a character is going through, a beat, whatever it may be. It doesn't always fall on appreciative eyes, I'm not going to lie. But it's something that I like to do. I want to hit on something. I want to do it succinctly, one word, and stylistically, it's something I can hear in an oral representation, even though it's coming off of the page, right? It's almost like I can hear it in audiobook form, or I could hear it in one of the podcasts, but I still do that. So I always take that kind of stuff with a grain of salt. When people use stronger language, those are less subtle signs, but they're still signs that it might be a voice issue that they're working with. They think something is too colorful or too aggressive, even though it's internal dialogue, thoughts. Maybe it's just exposition. Of course, we take careful assessment of what the group has said, but again, this is your creation. And if it's a voice issue, know that. So that should be a step in your checklist from now on when groups do give you that feedback on your work. Before you go and highlight and delete that line in Word, what is it about this line that's not working? Is that a preference thing? Well, if it's a preference thing, why? Grammatically, it's cool. I like the way it's set up. It's correct-ish. Is it a voice thing? The way my author voice is coming through, it doesn't sit with them. Again, only you can answer that. But this is one more thing to add to your analysis, your assessment of your situation around you. When you're going to writing groups, what genre are you writing? What genre are most of the people there writing? What demographically, where does everybody fall? Things to think about. Something else to think about is joining us over at the Horrible Writing Writer Support Group on Facebook. As of the recording, which is still in middle of June, we're over 400 people. So it's nice to see this community really growing and becoming more and more active and really, really helpful to each other as well. Again, it's a no self-promotion group. So it's not one of those groups on Facebook where people go not pitch their books, but promote their books, right? We don't do that. In fact, I put some severe restraints on that because I can't stand that garbage. I don't pay attention to those groups. They're useless. It's just authors trying to sell to authors. It really doesn't make any sense to me, so we don't do it. We go there to celebrate, commiserate together. That's what it's all about. If you are enjoying the show, please go leave a rating and review. I don't get enough of those, and those are extremely helpful to a show's growth. So make sure that you go do that. If you would like to keep the show coming, patreon.com/Paul Sading. $1 a month gets you this and other exclusives over the course of the month. And there will be news in the future about a new show coming once I determine how I'm going to deliver it. I've got a couple options in my mind, but it will be a fiction show for me in my work. I'm not sure how I'm going to do it. I've got so many podcasts out there. I really can't keep adding expenses, so I'm looking at combining things. We'll see how that goes. More news to follow on that. Until next episode, episode 95 with author A.C. Ward. Keep being epic. This has been Horrible Writing, and hopefully after this episode, you suck less than you did at the beginning. I am Paul Sading, your host extraordinaire. You can find me over on the Twitterverse at Writing Horrible and over at paulsading.com/horrible-writing. Until next time, suck less.